Here comes the keynote, more of a concept note. When I was interacting across, people are worried about the global economy to start with. In the next 20 minutes, precisely, we will touch upon the global economy. We'll touch on the Qatar economy, what this means in terms of the current crisis, if at all, and recognizing more than the crisis, opportunity is what we count on. That's a positive attitude and character Qatar has demonstrated. Extraordinary set of resurgence in terms of patriotism. Recognizing to be self-reliant, Qatar has navigating it, the blockade in an extraordinary manner. The current dignity, the international statute in terms of political progression, social progression, and also the economic progression has been the telling story since long. The way it has been managed, it is a great honor to be part of the interesting leadership. The governance has set standards, has gone through extraordinary convergence. This is the expression I always use when I tell the Qatar story around the world over the last 15 years. Nothing short of professionalism, great leadership has been demonstrated world over. This crisis is going to be a real opportunity. To enlighten, along with me, three distinguished speakers. One from Qatar Financial Center, the CEO of Qatar Financial Center, Mr. Yusuf Jaida. And again, Qatar small and medium-sized entrepreneurs needs reinvigoration. Sustainability is the name of the game. To elucidate on the contribution Qatar Development Bank is doing to make this journey for entrepreneurship stable and functional, we have the CEO of Qatar Development Bank, Mr. Abdulaziz Khalifa is here. We also have Qatar Exchange CEO, who is going to showcase the market reforms in terms of capital market and what are the changes he is navigating to make sure we attract international investments. First 20 minutes, we will see what this crisis is all about, how the world is interpreting. And I had the privilege of being an integral part of many of the financial media over the last 30 years on account of my professional subscription. I've been giving the statement of fact, nothing but fact. And some of the clips, the finance minister, the foreign minister, and the momentum which we have seen, the energy and enthusiasm, the entrepreneurship, the spirit we have seen today is telling story. World at large is recognizing Qatar with great dignity and human prosperity. And that's what Qatar is all about. Let's watch what we have in store. In terms of global economies, still we are reeling under pressure. Since 2008, the financial crisis has set in a new set of re-regulation. From deregulation, we moved into re-regulations. And again, we are getting back to deregulations. The global growth sustainability has not been achieved. Eradication of extreme poverty, gender equality, universal health care, universal education, global warming and climate change. These are not ordinary issues. Global sustainability is what we are counting on, 2030 vision. The Millennium Development Goals, which are set in 2000, was redefined as Sustainable Development Goals. And world at large is still grossly underperforming. Looking at the July statistics, International Monetary Fund reports the global growth is not going to be more than 3.5%. In aggregate terms, advanced economies are less than 2%. Topping in the list is the United States, said to be recovering. Money supply has improved. Again, stock market is performing. Interest rate hike is visible 3 times in the last 7 months. We have seen the reflection of jobless claims reducing. America is on course to recover. Politics and economics is not converging world over. America is said to be around 2.1%, while Euro should be doing not more than 1.9%. And again, UK with Brexit still in the offing. Clearly, trade or investments, banking or finance getting redefined, should be doing 1.7%. And Japan with Abenomics, improved money supply, they are reporting 1.3% momentum. That's the advanced economy for you. When it comes to emerging markets, still, there's a considerable economic engine of the world today, incrementally adding values. They are slowing down. China is said to be doing 6.7%. India is topping the list as a functional democracy, reporting 7.2%. South Africa should be doing 0.3%. And when it comes to Russia, 1.4% from the contraction, they're coming out to positive terms. And Brazil should be doing less than 0.5%. So, world at large still reeling under pressure. When it comes to Middle East, North Africa, Gulf, we have seen reflection of aggregate terms, not more than 2.6%. This is the global agenda. When it comes to trade, global trade is less than 2008 position. We used to have double of the GDP as a minimum norm. That's a set standard world over, pre-crisis. Since 2008, it's been half of the GDP. As we see, last year, the global trade is 1.6%. When it comes to global investments, the currencies and commodities are getting intertwined. Currencies are administered to a large extent. Someone calls manipulation, someone calls currency adjustments. Whatever be the case, politics and economics have to converge, and policy makeup has to come to terms to redefine this world, to create human welfare, human prosperity. Within the Gulf now, there are challenges. Gone are the days when oil was over 100%, $100 plus, and essentially trillions of dollars were current account surplus, investable surplus, sovereign funds. 1/3 of the sovereign funds today is in the hands of Gulf, 2.3 trillion. Qatar economy, as an outstanding performer, is supposed to be reporting not less than $180 billion. The current account should be a surplus, while fiscal, there could be a deficit of 7 to 7.5%. We're taking oil prices at $45. We also have inflation indexed at 2.6%. Perhaps with the current crisis, it might marginally go up. That's what the governor is trying to manage it, measure it, control it in terms of money supplies and liquidity. Monetary policy and fiscal policy, there's a clear alignment in Qatar. We have seen the Qatar growth will not be less than 3.4%. Reflection in terms of fiscal reforms, reflection in terms of re-regulation, public-private partnership, and again, bankruptcy law, arbitration law, Qatar Financial Center investment deregulations, Qatar financial markets, integrated regulations, where the governor is the chairman of the Integrated Regulatory Authority, are setting new norms to see Qatar is stable and functional. And that's going to be a bigger opportunity with the realignment forming in. The supply chain integration has changed. It moved from plan A to plan B. Extraordinary set of changes, challenges we have witnessed of late. That's going to be an opportunity in substance. Let's look at what exactly the concept is all about. Now,
Qatar is currently being blockaded by its neighbors. Its only land border with Saudi Arabia is shut down, and it can't bring anything or anyone in or out. It's also been blocked from using the airspace or ports of Saudi, UAE, Bahrain, and Egypt. Qatar's economy relies heavily on importing food, exporting oil and natural gas, and air travel. So what does this all mean, and how is it impacting the country? This is what things used to look like. Qatar used to bring $1 billion worth of food and raw materials by land through its only border with Saudi Arabia. Its biggest imports like cars and aircraft equipment would be dropped off by cargo ships to Dubai and Abu Dhabi before being shipped to its own ports. And its oil and gas shipments would head through these same two ports to get to its clients in Japan, South Korea, India, China, and the UAE as well. Its airline, Qatar Airways, is one of the biggest, and its airport connects flights heading all over the world. So what has changed? For one thing, it can't bring in food from Saudi Arabia anymore, leaving a shortage of basics like water, sugar, meat, and vegetables. It's now getting some of it from Jordan and relying on large food flights from Turkey and Iran. Qatar says it's looking as far as Brazil and Australia for regular food imports in the future. Its major exports have also taken a hit, with some international carriers refusing to send ships straight to its ports. Instead, it's now bypassing the boycott altogether and sending its oil and gas through ports in Oman. It's it's actually still sending natural gas to the UAE despite the blockade, which could sway the Emiratis into easing restrictions. Finally, with hundreds of daily flights to its neighboring countries now cancelled and restrictions imposed on where it can fly, Qatar is having to reroute all of its flights through Iran and Oman, making its flights to Africa, Europe and South America much longer. Qatar's finance minister says the country has enough money in the bank to survive this diplomatic crisis. But how long can it last?
How long it will last? How are we coping up with the blockade? That's the question. If you look back the numbers, Qatar trade to Saudi Arabia in bilateral terms is $525 million. Qatar trade to UAE is $1.6 billion, predominantly export of LNG through Dolphin. And again, Qatar trade to Egypt is $1.1 billion. When it comes to Bahrain, $125 million. That's not significant. If you look at the bigger picture in terms of Japan or South Korea or Singapore or India or UK or the rest of the world in terms of LNG or oil or gas or petrochemicals, it is not significant. That's the message we have to get. We have to understand the crisis, yes. Is it significant? Will it impact the financial stability? The answer is no. And that's what we need to resolute ourselves. Those who understand the dynamics of the change can recognize it. And that's what we're all about. How it started, let's look forward.
The country of Qatar said on Wednesday that its official state news agency had been hacked. False statements attributed to its ruler had been posted. The statement was made on the official news agency's Twitter account. It asked the media not to publish the remarks that had been posted earlier. A story had run earlier on the agency's website, quoting a speech by Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, Qatar's ruler. The website quoted him on his country's relations with US President Donald Trump and Iran.
So the cyber hacking is a starting point on May 23rd, 24th. Then, our cyber security and stability is well driven. Here is the testimony. Bigger picture is, it comes from the Ministry of Interior.
تقوم وزارة الداخلية بالتعاون مع وزارة الاتصالات ومصرف قطر المركزي بتحديد الإطار القانوني والرقابي العام الذي يراقب ويحمي المصالح الوطنية بفاعلية. لقد وضعنا نظاما رقابيا صارما للإجراءات الأمنية وقمنا بتدريب مكثف لموظفي أمن المعلومات.
So, Qatar national security is well set. Qatar Central Bank, as an integral part of the membership, we have resolute and structured solutions to manage the contingencies at all counts. And that's what the banking system is evidencing today. We know this is an act of anyone.
Well, meanwhile, the Qatari team looking into the alleged hacking of the Qatar news agency has presented its findings in Doha, and it says people in the UAE were involved. The diplomatic crisis in the Gulf was sparked in May by quotes carried by the news agency that was said to be from the Qatari emir. Qatar says those quotes were fake and planted by hackers.
So, that's the starting point. But let's also understand the foreign policy alignment.
That he's talking about combating funding of Islamist ideology, and all of us, we are combating the funding of any terrorist groups.
Social justice, freedom, functional democracy. This is what Qatar stands for, and human rights. Whether alignment comes in terms of American education, whether a military base or policy institute, it's all convergence in terms of foreign policy makeup to make sure human dignity, human prosperity stands for. Qatar's convergence in terms of political, social, and economic progression has been the core statesmanship the world has witnessed over the last 22 years. And that's what precisely this crisis has revealed. What happened to the ad blockade? Let's see.
You know that not too long ago I announced that I was going to increase 24 new destinations. I couldn't do it because I had capacity restraint. Now that we have released capacity from the 18 destinations that we have been barred illegally from operating, we are now going to accelerate the other regions of the world where we feel that we will mitigate the reduction in passenger numbers from these 18 destinations. So Qatar Airways has a robust plan B to continue our march ahead.
Plan B, that's what everyone is engaged in, whether it's your bank, whether it's liquidity management, or the market risk, or cross-border challenges, and a counterparty risk. We know Plan B is working. It's working very well to Qatar's advantage. That's what the world at large is recognizing now. My testimony, when I met the international investors in Sydney and Singapore off late, that shows how much dignity Qatar has earned to be self-reliant. And a country is a telling story in the eyes of the world today.
This is for us, it's a big economy. It's almost, we're talking about almost a $200 billion GDP of state of Qatar. We are very much well-diversified economy. If you look at our energy sector and where we stand on this, that's also has been, things are business as usual, so it's moving very well. If you look at where we stand in food securities and what things happening inside the country, I think you are now in Doha, you've been here for a few days, and you told me just before that you're going to spend another 3 or 4 days here. I'm more than happy to take another interview after 2 or 3 days that once you go and see the city, look at the banks, look at the grocery store, look at the business, go to the malls. We are business as usual, and we are open for business. The country is very resilient. We have the assets and the security that we need. Our foreign assets and our foreign investments is more than 250% of our GDP, so we are very much comfortable. We know we can defend the currency or we can defend the economy, but I don't think there is anything that we need to worry about.
We are comfortable. That's what this issue is all about. Many of us saying, even the central bank governor says, we are strong, stable, and functional. Now,
another issue I know you all are keeping a very close eye on is Qatar. So I want to give you an update on that right now. Since the embargo was first enforced on June the 5th, the Secretary has had more than 20 phone calls and meetings with Gulf and other regional and international actors. The interactions have included 3 phone calls and 2 in-person meetings with the Foreign Minister of Saudi Arabia, 3 phone calls with the Foreign Minister of Qatar, and 3 calls with the Qatari Emir. Numerous other calls have taken place with the leaders of UAE, Oman, Kuwait, Bahrain, and others. Now that it's been more than 2 weeks since the embargo started, we are mystified that the Gulf states have not released to the public, nor to the Qataris, the details about the claims that they are making toward Qatar. The more the time goes by, the more doubt is raised about the actions taken by Saudi Arabia and the UAE. At this point, we are left with one simple question. Were the actions really about their concerns regarding Qatar's alleged support for terrorism, or were they about the long-simmering grievances between and among the GCC countries? The Secretary is determined to remain engaged as we monitor the situation. He has been delivering the same message to other diplomats overseas. We are encouraging all sides to de-escalate tensions and engage in constructive dialogue. We once again call on all parties to focus on the core regional and international goal of fighting terrorism, to meet the commitments that were made in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and to constructively resolve this dispute.
Constructively resolve is what is a concern. That's the issue. In real terms, if you look at the financial reserves, $340 billion. Central bank is sitting with $40 billion with plus gold. We know we had net borrowing liability, net external liability, 120 billion Qatari riyal. We are selling oil, we are selling gas, we are petrochemicals. There are recurring revenues. This is not an end of it, but to a large extent, unfortunately, the financial media, as well, on account of knee-jerk reactions, are overstated. We need to clarify. We need to recognize the numbers are stable, functional. The challenges are measurable, manageable, and controllable. And that's a true reflection of the financial status. If you look at imports, in June, the net surplus is $3.5 billion. Yes, imports were high. The net trade surplus resulting in $3.5 billion. There is a knee reaction in terms of customer behavior as well. There is absolute concern on all sides, but this is temporary. This is short term. Medium and long term, Qatar will come out stronger than ever. If you look at interbank rates, people say interbank rates have gone up 3 times in the last 7 months, as I mentioned in my preface. In December, in March, and again on June 18th, the interest rate hike was factored by United States. We are parity linked to dollar. And again, simultaneous reflection as a currency was factored. So in July, interbank rates have gone up by 7 basis points. Now, if you look at, read the underlying statements by Moody's or other rating agencies, it has moved from AA2 to AA3. The AA rating is a worthy credit. The outlook has been put to negative. It means the borrowing cost for the sovereign or institutions may go up slightly. It doesn't imply anything beyond that. Conceptually, Qatar economy, as you rightly said, I did say in Geneva, in European Business School, Qatar economy is sustaining its credit. It's oil, gas, and petrochemicals. That's what we consume across the globe. And we have, if you look at the breakups last year, around 64 billion Qatar Real is the GDP on account of oil and gas. Around 12 billion is investment revenues, and 61 billion is other revenues. So effectively, 48% is oil and gas, 52% is non-oil. If you look at the economic momentum, it's 3.4% growth. Again, arguably largest in the Gulf. When it comes to hydrocarbon growth, it's going to be between 1.5% to 2%. Non-hydrocarbon is a driving force, 7 to 8%. So if you look at a bigger picture in terms of macroeconomics, you have net assets plus reserves, 2.5 times of the GDP. The central bank has got reserves over $35 billion. Echoing the same, every economist will tell you the revenue is recurring and reserves can be improvised. Investment flows can be measured and managed. And this is what the central bank governor has to say.
Played a big role as Qatar Central Bank, and we find our banking sector is well capitalized, meeting the Basel III. They have high liquid asset, plus they has a very good interbanking activity inside and outside, and they are very stable at this moment. So we don't believe that there is anything to worry about it at this moment. What I can say is that our environment proved to anybody that we are, first of all, solid, strong, and resilient against any kind of shocks.
Let's go by the numbers. Again, first 6 months, the asset expansion is 3%. The loans and advance books have increased by 4%. Deposits have grown by 6%. Consumer retailing has grown by 2%. Contract financing is static in terms of incremental growth. Service sector has grown by 5%. That is the issue. And that's what we need to articulate. We need to look at the facts as it is, without fabrication.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, and thank you for welcoming us to Doha today. And we also appreciated the time His Highness the Emir afforded us for a very good discussion upon our arrival as well. I am here in Qatar today carrying with me the same spirit which President Trump traveled in Riyadh with in May. The United States has one goal: drive terrorism off the face of the earth. The President said, and I quote, "Every country in the region has an absolute duty to ensure that terrorists find no sanctuary on their soil." The agreement in which we both have signed on behalf of our governments represents weeks of intensive discussions between experts and reinvigorates the spirit of the Riyadh summit.
The point is convergence, again, in policy framework, combating terrorism financing or anti-money laundering. Qatar set in the right kind of framework. Since 2002, extraordinary set of re-regulation has taken place, and Doha Bank itself used to have 100 Wall Street as our address. And the branch was upgraded on recognizing by the regulators, OCC, because we know the regulatory framework is well set in, well disciplined, stable, measured, managed, and controlled. That's the spirit of entrepreneurship. When there is a crisis, it can be converted into an opportunity. There are bigger plans to be a net exporter in terms of dairies. That's what the government and the public-private partnership is evolving to be a combination. There is a solution for every crisis. And this is a testimony I can showcase. It is, in summary, it's a strategic miscalculation. We have to interpret as it is. It's an absolute strategic miscalculation. Qatar blockade is doomed. That's what the world at large is recognizing. Now,
well, Saturday marks 2 months since the Saudi-led alliance cut diplomatic ties and transport links with Qatar over its alleged support for terrorism and Iran. Qatar's net international reserves dropped 30% in June, and foreign deposits at its banks fell the most in almost 2 years. But our next guest believes that this Gulf state can remain financially stable. Dr.R.Seetharaman is Group CEO of Doha Bank. Much indeed for joining us. How is this, well, they don't call it an embargo, but it is in all but name, hitting your bottom line?
Well, these are changing times and challenging times. Qatar proved to be resilient. You did mention that 30% reserves. The total reserves is $340 billion. That is sovereign funds. In addition, we have central bank with cash and gold, 40 billion. So essentially 30% reduction, which you mentioned, is confined to only central bank reserves to improve the local market liquidity. So the GDP and versus reserves, if you look at it, twice of the GDP is their reserves. So in terms of financial stability, it is strong and stable and functional. And the challenges remains in terms of alternate supplies, and the airport or seaport or road, the alternate supplies has been sought, and essentially plan A to plan B is a conversion which they are engaged in. The operational research proved to be a right model, and it is working well. Except the food price inflation, the rest are all under control. Qatar's recurring revenues in terms of oil, gas, and petrochemicals is in the making. That's long-term supply chain, and essentially the roadblock is not there in real order. And that's what everyone has to understand. International community is recognizing in terms of political progression, social progression, and economic progression, Qatar seems to be a resilient and model economy.
Looking at this from a geopolitical point of view, does this also perhaps mean that Qatar actually becomes closer to Iran and not more distant to it? After all, Qatar and Iran do share the world's largest gas field.
You can't avoid your neighbors, right? Geography is fixed in global order. Essentially, the transactions which are prejudicial to the universal framework, Patriot Act or Iran sanctions, have not been violated by Qatar. I can tell you as a banker. There are established framework, well defined, and whether it is OFAC or United Nations Security Council, resolutions have been respected. Now, neighbor is a neighbor, and you have to respect the sentiments. That's what Qatar was trying to be in consonance. But in terms of compliance and substantive compliance, Qatar always fulfilled its obligations as a statesman. In terms of financial services, there are no breach of regulations whatsoever over the years. There is no breach of regulation whatsoever. That's the message. What we need to recognize is international institutions have been governed by universal French benchmarks. Irrespective of the list of demands anyone can raise between the countries, those are individual visions. Or when it comes to universal norms, there are established framework. Those distillers are clearly measured, managed by the regulators. And that's what the public at large has to recognize. And again, if you look at the overall framework, is tested, proven, and resilient time and again. As you know, these are knee-jerk reactions. One fine morning, this kind of blockade is unheard of, and that has destabilized in terms of overall deposit base. Locally, the expatriates, if you look at the demographic structure, you have expatriate base, they started remitting money. And also, the overall outflow is $6 billion, which is insignificant compared to the overall net assets Qatar has got. Yes, there were drain, but it is not significant. Qatar Central Bank is sitting with $40 billion cash. So $6 billion is the outflow. And they have to mobilize short-term liquidity and beef up the local market liquidity for the local banks. And that's what precisely happened. Yes, there were some knee-jerk reactions. And that's what the governor and the banking CEOs, we got together time and again, measuring it, we are managing it, controlling it, and we will evolve to be a sustainable performer. And that's what the reassurance, world at large. That's why when BBC asked me this question, I have to tell them. In substance, if you look at the bigger picture, now the opportunities are more than the crisis. Now we have fiscal reforms. And Emir's speech on 21st July was a breaking point. World at large has recognized this statesmanship. And the dignity has gone up miles ahead compared to anyone can aspire for.
لفتح اقتصادنا للمبادرات والاستثمار بحيث ننتج غذاءنا ودواءنا وننوع مصادر دخلنا ونحقق استقلالنا الاقتصادي ضمن علاقات ثنائية من التعاون مع الدول الأخرى في محيطنا الجغرافي وفي العالم أجمع وعلى أساس المصالح المشتركة والاحترام المتبادل. كما أننا مدعوون إلى تطوير مؤسساتنا التعليمية والبحثية والإعلامية ومصادر قوتنا الناعمة كافة على المستوى الدولي، وفي تفاعل مع أفضل الخبرات القطرية والعربية والأجنبية، وهذا كله بالطبع بالتعاون مع المقيمين في بلادنا الذين يعملون وينتجون ويعيشون معنا ووقفوا معنا في هذه الأزمة. سبق أن وجهت عدة مرات لاتباع سياسة الانفتاح الاقتصادي على الاستثمار وتنويع مصادر الدخل، ولكن في هذه المرحلة لم يعد هذا مسألة رفاهية، بل أصبح أمرا ملزما ومحتما علينا ولا مجال للتهاون فيه، وهذه مسؤوليتنا جميعا حكومة ورجال أعمال. لقد ساعدتنا هذه الأزمة في تشخيص النواقص والعثرات أمام تحديد شخصية قطر الوطنية السياسية والاقتصادية المستقلة، وفي اتخاذ القرار بالتغلب على هذه العقبات وتجاوزها. وها أنا أتوجه إليكم فيما نخوض جميعا هذا الامتحان بعزة وكرامة لأقول لكم إن قطر بحاجة لكل منكم في بناء اقتصادها وحماية أمنها. نحن بحاجة للاجتهاد والإبداع والتفكير المستقل والمبادرات البناءة والاهتمام بالتحصيل العلمي في الاختصاصات كافة، والاعتماد على النفس ومحاربة الكسل والاتكالية. وهذه ليست مجرد أماني وأحلام، فأهدافنا واقعية وعملية وتقوم على استمرار الروح التي يظهرها القطريون في هذه الأزمة، بحيث لا تكون موجة حماس عابرة بل أساسا لمزيد من الوعي في بناء الوطن.
New set of patriotism, resurgence of energy, and that's what we are seeing. See the reflection. New sense of optimism, new energy, enthusiasm, infectious enthusiasm. That's what we are seeing in terms of business, in terms of human dignity. And again, there are landmark legislations have been passed of late. You have seen the reflection. So, to sum it up, this is history. What is ahead is very important. Me and my panel will be delighted to tell you some of the interesting facts in multiple segments. Thank you for your kind attention, ladies and gentlemen.